I've been thinking quite a lot recently about the subject of grief, loss and mourning. It would be reasonable to someone who doesn't know me but knows what I do for a living to presume that such reflections are never far from my thoughts. But it wouldn't be true, or not in my case anyway. It's far more likely that I've been influenced by my own brush with the Grim Reaper about 4 weeks ago, when I was admitted to hospital as an emergency, directly from an outpatient appointment. A week, 3 blood transfusions and various forms of oscopy later, I was finally discharged with orders to rest and to eat and to build up my levels. And just as I was preparing to return to work, COVID-19, or as I am now calling it, Bradbury's disease, struck the country, and my little medical difficulty paled into insignificance. But whilst I was stuck in that hospital bed and wide awake in the small hours of the night in the not quite dark, not very silent, definitely not restful hospital ward, I found myself contemplating my own demise with rather more urgency than I had previously, even when enduring my previous medical adventure about a year ago. You probably know what I'm talking about, the kind of thing that goes through your mind at 3 AM when you aren't quite asleep but you aren't really awake. I suddenly realised, for example, that I hadn't revised my will for a very long time. Well, since about 1993 actually. I didn't think my brother and sister-in-law, or my wife's sister and brother-in-law, were going to see themselves as being able to take in my 3 children and care for them after all. Mind you, since of the 3 little children I was then anxious to protect, one's now a public relations manager, one's an assistant principal in a secondary school, and the oldest is a detective sergeant in the police service, you would hope that by now they had some vague inkling about how to look after themselves. I hope so, because they're going to be looking after me before too long. But there were other things as well. Personal things. I could list my achievements. At that point, I was at such a low ebb that I felt that those could safely be consigned to the back of a postage stamp. And I could equally well list my failings. And again, in the depth of the night, it seemed to me that I could fill several volumes of the size of the Encyclopaedia Britannica with those. But really it was the unfinished nature of so many of the elements of my life which troubled me. How I wished I'd taken the trouble to listen to a few bars of Bruce Springsteen's, what I believe some people call it music. Why hadn't I finished writing that novel? No, wait, those novels, there were at least 2 of them. What a shame that I hadn't formally decided which of my children was going to inherit my vast jewellery collection. Why hadn't I made it clear that if they chose "Oh Love That Will Not Let Me Go" for my funeral, I absolutely would come back and haunt them every day without mercy? That kind of thing. Seems to me that what I went through in that week of sleepless nights, the doubts, the sense of unfinished business, the thought that all this might come to an end without having had the chance to heal the self-inflicted emotional wounds we all carry, or mend a fractured relationship. Well, it was only actually a harbinger of what the whole country is going through right now. I mentioned yesterday that this crisis has the power to fracture our society, to cause us all to feel alone and abandoned, and that such an abandonment can let in the loneliness, twist our perspective, make every shadow threatening, every change a change for the worse. I think the people who've been visibly worsening the effects of the crisis by going out in large groups to pubs, besieging supermarkets, panic buying and stripping shelves like swarms of locusts, refusing to defer to key workers from the NHS whilst there, and driving out to beaches and beauty spots and overwhelming them, are not simply reacting in blind panic to a monstrous fear. They are, paradoxically, trying to deny the reality of what's happening. Now, Christians are often accused of being too heavenly minded to be any earthly good. And to be fair, that's not always an accusation without evidence. But having said that, it's often been the constant behaviour of people of faith, whilst under the most extreme of hellish circumstances, which has demonstrated the possibility of redemption and held out hope to those who think they have no hope, the hope of change, the hope of transformation. There's a long chain of witnesses who testified to the power of grace and love in their lives, and by that witness have transformed not only the lives of others, but healed and restored whole communities and even nations, and have overcome much which is recognised as evil. They have done that not by denying the reality of evil, not by deluding themselves about the true nature of what people need to face up to in their lives, but by recognising the undistorted truth which stared them in the face and doing the right thing, no matter what the cost to them personally. Some have given impetus to movements which have taken on lives of their own, even if they themselves did not survive their personal battle. The vast majority of such witnesses, those who died for the truth, those who survived their stand but were scarred and maybe even shattered by their encounter with evil, have for the most part been ordinary human beings, people like you and me, people who have dispelled the fears of many night times by the simple exercise of their own goodness. If we are to, as a society, are to survive this crisis, then it can only be done when each of us decides that, come what may, we will not give in to the night terrors. We will not live in such a way as to diminish or deny the power of simple acts of kindness and love. How we react to a crisis itself has the power to transform a situation and indeed to go a long way towards redeeming what might seem hopeless. Like yesterday, I'm going to finish with a poem. It's by a poet called Edwin Muir, and it's called The Good Man in Hell. The language is a bit highfalutin, but bear with it. The Good Man in Hell. If a good man were ever housed in hell by a needful error of the qualities, perhaps to prove the rule or shame the devil, or speak the truth only a stranger sees, would he, surrendering to obvious hate, fill half eternity with cries and tears, or watch beside hell's little wicket gate in patience for the first 10,000 years, feeling the curse climb slowly to his throat that, uttered, dooms him to rescindless ill, forcing his praying tongue to run by rote, eternity entire before him still? Would he at last, grown faithful in his station, kindle a little hope in hopeless hell, and sow among the damned doubts of damnation, since here someone could live, and could live well? One doubt of evil would bring down such a grace, open such a gate, all Eden would enter in. Hell be a place like any other place, and love and hate and life and death begin.